So last week we posted a video to our social media streams on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and here on YouTube, asking for your questions. We as an organization have the opportunity every year to talk to really thousands of folks dealing with an amazing array of personal life issues. A lot of those are military related, and some just aren't military related. They're just life issues. And it's really a privilege and an honor to be able to talk to folks who are struggling and try to help them and help them maybe put things in perspective or give them some tools that they can use to move forward. And so we have the opportunity to do that on a one-on-one basis. And this is a platform where we can maybe share some of those things with others. And so we ask for you to give your questions to us. And it's not that we have all of the answers, but we have a lot of resources available to us. And some of you did post questions, and I appreciate that. And I've kind of taken those from the various platforms and brought them together and want to start answering those. I'm not going to answer all of them today, but want to start answering some of those. If you're watching this and you have a question, just put it down in the comments. We would love to pick those questions up and just have an ongoing dialogue and see where this takes us. And again, no questions are off limits. Doesn't mean we'll answer every question, but you can ask any question that you want to, and we'll look at those, and over time we'll do our best to answer those. And I appreciate those who have responded and those who will respond. All right, so today, to get us started, two questions, and one of them I get asked all of the time, and one I get asked infrequently, but occasionally. And so I'm going to start there, and these are both related to the military. Not all of the questions we'll answer necessarily are. I'd love to answer Bible questions or really any questions that you have. But these are related to the military, and again, they're questions that I've received. One often, one once in a while, and I'll start with the less asked question first. And the question is this: what would you suggest to a parent whose son wants to be an Army Ranger and enlist as soon as he graduates from high school? What would you tell your child? Well, the first thing I tell him is you need to enlist in the Marine Corps, not the Army. That's the first thing I would say. But that's me. Just kidding. The Army's great, and Army Rangers are fine. They're not Marines, but they're pretty good. All right. What would I say? This is interesting to me right now in my life because I have a 17-year-old son who will be graduating high school in just a couple of months. And he's getting ready to punch out and start living the next phase of his life. He's talking about being a police officer, and I think that he'll do that. And man, there's a lot of maybe anxiety. I don't like to admit it, but some anxiety, and as a parent, you worry, and you want to say to your kids who want to do things like this, want to go into the military or want to maybe go into law enforcement or something else, don't do it. That's what you want to tell them. But really, we know as parents, our goal is to equip our kids to do what God has created them to do and what God has called them to do. So as a parent, I don't think the right answer is don't do it. I think that we need to help them, though, get some right perspective. And that's very, very important. A young person going into the military, going to law enforcement, really anywhere in life, is trying to figure out who they are. They have some ideals that they're trying to meet, maybe some romantic ideas about what life will be like. And there isn't always a lot of accurate context around that. And you don't want to shoot those things down or tear them down. You want to be excited with them, and you want them ultimately to be able to come back to you later if they struggle or if they're excited about something, whatever. You want to be a part of that relationship. So you don't want to damage that before they even get there. But I do think it's important, and I've tried to do this with my son who, again, wants to go into law enforcement. My daughter is 19. She's going to college, and she's trying to figure some things out. I think what you want to do is remind them of a few things and reinforce some things with them. It's very important that as they go into the world, whatever world that is, that they understand, first of all, who they are, that they're not that job. They're not that uniform. They're not that career. They're not that college. They're not that success that they might enjoy or even the failure that they might struggle with. They're not those things. They are a person created by God to accomplish what He's set in front of them. And that there will be highs and there will be lows, and in all of it, God loves them. And so do I as their parent. I think reinforcing that truth is very, very important. This job is something you'll do, and I hope you do great, and I believe you will, but don't let this become your identity. Don't forget who you are. Don't forget what we've taught you about yourself and about your family. I would say don't forget who you are, understand your identity, but also hang on to your faith. This is really important. I'm going to talk about the second part of this here in a minute, the second question. How can you be a Christian in the military? I'm going to talk about that because I think that's a great question. But when you enter into the military, I'll say this, when you separate from your family and a lot of those routines of going to church and being involved in aspects of the faith life, when those aren't forced upon you anymore, it's easy to drift away from those. Now, if you've taught your kids to have an authentic faith, an authentic relationship with God, then you need to encourage them to continue to do that. You need to encourage them that when they go out on their own, that they find a church, that they find a group of friends that they can be around, that they get involved in things like Bible study and those kind of things. That's so important. Remind them of who they are, but then also remind them of who God is. And the fact that whatever happens in their lives out there, that God doesn't change and God is with them. I want to read these verses. I love these verses, and when I read this question, I thought of these. This is great. The Psalms, Psalm 139, the psalmist, he asks a question of God. He says this, "Whither shall I go from thy spirit?" How shall I go from your spirit? Or whither shall I flee from thy presence? Not as easy for me to say. Let me say it again. Whither shall I go from thy spirit, or whither shall I flee from thy presence? That's old English, right? He's saying, how do I get away from you, from your spirit, from your presence? And then he says these things. If I ascend into heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you're there. Now these are two great extremes, right? If everything is right, I'm in heaven, you're there. But if I find myself not in heaven, you're there too. He says, if I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. What a great verse. The psalmist says, wherever I go, the really good things, the really bad things, the times in my life where everything's amazing, and the times in my life where things aren't as amazing, through it all, God, you're there, and you hold me in your hand. So here's what I would do, and what I try to do with my kids. You're going out on your own. You're going to go do the thing that you think that you've been called to do. It's the military. It's law enforcement. It's something else. Don't forget who you are. You are not that circumstance or that situation, the stuff that's swirling around you. You're not that. Don't forget who you are. You are a unique individual created by God for a purpose. Don't forget who you are, but don't forget who God is. God loves you, good, bad, otherwise you're making good decisions, not such good decisions, you're doing really well, you're having a hard time. Through all of it, God loves you and He holds you in His hands. The third thing I would communicate is this. As your parent, as your dad, I will always love you. I may not always like what you're doing. I may not always feel comfortable with the decisions that you're making, but I will always love you. Here's the thing. When my kids go through things that are maybe difficult, when they're having a hard time, I want them to come back to me. I want them to know it's okay. And if they're in a difficult season of life because of decisions that they've made, I want them to know that they can come back. Even if I don't approve of what they're doing or the decisions that they've made, that I will love them, and together we'll figure this thing out and move forward. Here's what I would tell my kids. I'd say, look, you're going to go off and do this thing. It's for you to decide what to do. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it or into it. That's not my thing. That's between you and God. But don't ever forget who you are. Don't ever forget who God is and how much He loves you and how He's going to hold you in His hands. And don't ever forget that you can always come home. I think if we do those things, if we reinforce those three things, we really give our children the permission they need to go out and succeed, to go out and try stuff, maybe to even have a hard time. But there's kind of a safety net underneath them. They'll fall back on who they are when people are trying to pull them away. They'll trust God when sometimes things don't make sense. And they'll know that they can always come back to us, and we'll put our arms around them and try to help them. That's a great question. And man, as someone who has older teenage kids, that is so relevant to where I am, and I hope that's helpful. There's a second part of this, and I want to talk about this just briefly because I think this is really important. A second question that I get asked often, and it goes along with that, is how can a Christian be a good Christian in the military? And that's it. Again, I think that's the other side of this question. And maybe your child going into the military is not a Christian, but perhaps they are. I think they're kind of two sides of the same question. How can a Christian serve well in the military? I'm going to give an expanded answer on this at some point in the future, but I'm going to tell you guys what I tell everyone who asks this question. A Christian in the military needs to do three things, okay? Listen, I served as an infantry officer in the Marine Corps. I've known a lot of Christians in the military serving in the infantry communities. I went to combat. I've known others who have. And in spite of what we hear about religious persecution and the rest of it, my experience is that it's no different than a lot of other places in the world. Christians are persecuted in a lot of places. And honestly, what most people call persecution is just not really persecution. It's people not being nice to them, okay? Those are two very different things. And I think we get those confused. But if you want to be successful as a Christian in the military, here's what you need to do. Number one, be authentic. Be authentic. Don't tell people you're one thing and act like you're something else. Be authentic. Be real. If you say you believe these things and you say you have these morals and these ideals, don't let anything knock you off of that. There is nothing more powerful than someone who is authentic and real, who has the integrity to follow through on the things they say they actually believe. Be authentic. Be real. That's the first thing. That's where it begins. And there may be some ridicule and some making fun of or whatever on the front end, but if you're authentic and you're consistent and you're real, people will get it, right? Number two, and this is one that, man, this is so important if you are a believer in the military. The second one, be exceptional. Be exceptional. It is not okay to be average or subpar, below average, if you are a Christian in the military. You know, it speaks louder than any words you could speak or any background you might have or a college that you may have attended or a name that may be attached to you somehow or some connection you have. Something much more powerful than any of those things is someone who is exceptional at the job that they do. Do the very best that you possibly can every day you serve in the military. You may be an enlisted service member. I was going to say Marine. Not everyone's a Marine. Understand that. You may be an enlisted service member. You may be an officer serving somewhere. You may be whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Be exceptional. Be the very best that you can be. Be the person that everyone else looks up to, because the thing that trumps everything else is exceptional performance. That's a high standard. But if you're going to say you are a Christian in the military, you better be willing and ready to live an exceptional life and set an exceptional example. Is that fair? Probably not. But we're not talking about fair. We're talking about how to have people respect you as a Christian in the military. Number one, be authentic, be real. Do what you say you're going to do. Number two, be exceptional. You may not be the best in the world, but be the one that works the hardest, the one that gets there first, the one that stays there latest. Be the one who's setting the pace for everything else. And then I want to say this, and I mean this in the right spirit, and I hope it's received that way. Don't take things so personally. Don't take everything so personally. I've had these conversations before, and they hurt my feelings because of what they said or whatever. Don't take things personally. You can either look at service as a Christian in the military as a burden to bear, or as an unbelievably exceptional opportunity that you have. I mean, what an amazing opportunity to take the love of Jesus Christ and the light of the gospel into a dark place where people are looking for direction. As someone who works in an organization that serves the military and knows a lot of people who do the same, that's what we're doing from the outside in. You can do that from the inside out. How can you be a good Christian in the military? Do three things. Number one, be authentic. Be real. Number two, be exceptional. Be the very best that you can possibly be. And number three, live a life that understands what an amazing opportunity you have. All right, those are the questions for today. That's a lot of stuff. But I hope that's a help to you and an encouragement to you. That is the purpose of this thing, and I trust that it will be. If you have questions, comments, something you'd like to say or just talk about, something you'd like for us to discuss, please drop that in the comment section below, and we'd love to get that to you. Thank you, and we'll talk to you next time.